Harrison Ford once said, "I'm Indiana Jones. When I'm gone, he's gone." This quickly laid to rest ideas that anyone had about recasting the titular archaeologist adventurer. Now, Ford is back in the 5th installment of the franchise, which has him facing off against Nazis attempting once again to use relics to change the fate of humanity. It's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, written by Jez Butterworth, John Henry Butterworth, David Koepp, and James Mangold, directed by James Mangold, starring Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mads Mikkelsen, Antonio Banderas, John Rhys-Davies, Toby Jones, Boyd Holbrook, and Ethan Isidore. And of course, for a complete cast listing, you can check the link in our show notes. I am here alone. That's right, it's just me today, and I am a big Indiana Jones fan. I have watched Indiana Jones. Actually, the first one that I remember watching, and my favorite one, was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and I watched it with my sister sometime in the 90s, and we used to watch it all the time because it was so funny, and it felt so relevant to me and her at the time. The idea of the Holy Grail and this artifact, we were Christian kids growing up, so watching him chase after this artifact and the ways in which it kind of interacted with biblical lore, we just really, really enjoyed that story, me and my sister. So I've always had this attachment. I ended up going back, of course, and watching Temple of Doom, going back and watching Raiders of Lost Ark, watched all of them. Again, my favorite is The Last Crusade, obviously, but all of them, and I think that's actually not a popular opinion, but it's the one that I'm most attached to, because I think people like Raiders of the Lost Ark probably the most. Temple of Doom is also pretty good. I can't think of the one where they actually opened the Ark of the Covenant and blew that dude's face off. I can't remember which one that one is. One of you yelling it at me right now. Why don't you hit me up? You know what I'm saying? Find me on Twitter or on Instagram. Tell me which one that is. By the time you send it to me, I'll already know. But this one is, Indiana Jones is a bit older. Harrison Ford is, I believe, in his 80s now. And in this one, there is a use of digital mapping, of course, to kind of give some history to the story. So we get to see Indiana Jones at his, the age that I met him at, where he's a much younger man, I think in his 30s or 40s. And he's out there fighting the Nazis per usual. This scene, watching his digitally altered face, I will say it's not quite Carrie Bradshaw in Rogue One. It's not quite that, but it is a little, we can tell something's going on. But what the good thing is in this technology, the movement of his body is accurate because if I'm not mistaken, he is the stand-in for his body. So it's his body, him walking around, and they map on a younger face. So he wears something on his face and they map it on there. So I think that part to start off the movie, I had a feeling saying, I hope I saw those trailers right. I remember seeing a very much older Harrison Ford running around, jumping on horses and doing wild stuff, whereas not the digitally altered one that I think, are we about to watch that for the whole movie? And sure enough, that does not happen. Disaster averted. I like this movie. I really like it. It evoked all the feelings that I had as not a super young child, probably as a teenager, all the feelings I had as a teenager watching Harrison Ford run around and do it in a way that felt age appropriate. There's a lot of remakes now. In a way, it reminded me of the way I felt when I saw Dr. Grant and Dr. Sadler and Ian Malcolm on the newest Jurassic World, which I think is a terrible movie. But when I saw those three on screen, I remember thinking, yeah, I could watch them do this. But they're doing like stuff that you would expect. Like if I saw my parents doing a little bit bit of running around or a little bit of scurrying or being excited about something, that's something that's completely believable. I don't want to see them necessarily swinging from stuff, running on top of trains and all of that. And you don't really get the octogenarian Harrison Ford doing that in this film. But with John Williams' score set behind and kind of the look, they nailed the look and the feel of what it would be like to be kind of an Indiana Jones placed out of time, no pun intended, and also no spoilers here. But it kind of nailed that look and feel. And I think that's what made me really start to be excited about this movie. And I think it's the fact that this version of Harrison Ford, I watched him in, there's a show, I think it's called Shrinking, if I'm not mistaken, on Apple TV. And I think that Harrison Ford is the secret weapon of that show. He's hilarious. He doesn't take himself too seriously. He's having a good time. And that's what he's doing in this movie. And it's really enjoyable to watch him. He's in there with Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who is doing a fine job. I don't think she necessarily stood out as doing anything. She just really didn't stand out to me, but that's not a negative. I'm not looking at her being like, wow, what a terrible actor. I think she did fine, but in some ways I felt like that probably could have been anybody. It didn't have to be Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Again, it was fine seeing her. I like her and her other stuff. Whatever that show was she did, Scumbag, Dirtbag, Fleabag. Yeah, like she did really good in that show, Fleabag. And she's a great writer, but I don't know. Seeing her do this, I just wasn't necessarily like blown away, but I wasn't repulsed either. I think give her other gigs, maybe find something else suited. But I mean, you go to Indiana Jones to watch Indiana Jones, and there's a lot of emotional beats in this movie that are going to make you tear up, especially if you are an Indiana Jones fans. For all the fans out there, this is a good movie. This forgives all of the mistakes that I think were made in the Kingdom of Crystal Skull. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, is that what it's called? And now I'm sitting here wondering, I think John Williams also did the score for that one. But the thing that gets me is I can't really say that. I know that the twist in Kingdom of Crystal Skull is awful and to me it was dumb and stupid. I really didn't like it. And my brain just erased the rest of that movie. Just gone. It's gone. And whenever that happens, I always look at that as a mark as something that wasn't that good, didn't have staying power. I don't remember it being a good movie. I don't remember it much at all. So, and I'm saying all that to say this one is going to stick with me a bit. I really enjoyed it. There was just a lot of fun that they had in this movie in a way that I don't know, this summer movie season, this fits in very well with all of them that I've been seeing. I just had a good time. I think it was better than, I'm seeing a lot of these movies out of order because I have press screenings now. That's right, press screenings now. Y'all been with me for a long time. But yeah, I have press screenings now, which means that I see movies out of order. So sometimes I know that this is the next review y'all are going to hear from me. So you should have just heard last week I did... I can't even remember. Oh, last week I did The Blackening, which was what you just heard. Now you're hearing Indiana Jones. And next week you should hear Joyride. And I believe the following week you'll hear the movie that I saw yesterday, which is Mission Impossible. And I can tell you now, I think that I enjoyed this movie more than I enjoyed Mission Impossible. I don't know if I could say it's better. I really kind of want to watch Mission Impossible a second time to really see how I feel. But just seeing them back to back like this, I really think that this movie, I just had a better time in it. So with all of that being said, it wasn't perfect. There was a couple of, there was some specific acts of violence that I think were unnecessary and felt a little flippant, especially against black and brown folks in this movie. Felt like they took their time to do kind of just very reckless just very reckless things to black and brown people that I didn't really appreciate. I think up until those portions, I was like, this is a 4-star movie. And that kind of was like, I don't think y'all needed to do that. Did they need to be a part of this body count? Where was this going? And it felt like at some point these characters only existed to kind of help white folks get to where they were going, which I don't like that. I mean, it's 2023. Like at some point, just know that those characters can be helpful, can be anybody, at this point. So, and I know it's people are like, well, it's a different time, whatever. I don't know. I came to enjoy a fantasy movie or an action adventure movie. And I don't want to jump in there and be like, great, now you're making me think about this other like little oppressive structure that's like making this just not as fun for me. So it was a 4-star movie, and that kind of dropped it down for me to a 3.75. I still think I had a good time though. I really enjoyed it. We'll definitely show it to my parents. They would enjoy it as well. With that, Leaving the Theater is a production of OhitsBigRon Studios. Alexandra Ketch of Bias Studios mixes the show. Thank you, Alex. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at OhitsBigRon. That's at OhitsBigRon. You can find out more about this show and other OhitsBigRon Studio shows by following us on Instagram at OhitsBigRon Studios and on Twitter at OhitsBigRon Stew. That's STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening.